Welcome in, everyone. This is Sean with MTG808 Jr. And today we're going to be taking a look at the blue-black aggro deck that we featured in a deck tech. This deck was played by Kyle in our November 4th Youth Standard Pauper tournament. And if you haven't checked out our other video, we'll put a link to it in the description. You should definitely check that video out first. We feature the deck that Kyle played to a second place finish. The deck that we're going to be going over today, so this is Kyle's deck here. There will be a link to this in the description as well. The deck that we're going to be going over today is an upgraded version of that. I kind of took the theme that Kyle started with, some of the core cards that he was playing, and just tried to streamline them, try to make the deck very dedicated to being aggressive, trimmed some of the late game cards that he was playing to just play more early game cards. And so this is what we're going to be looking at today. There will be a link to this this version of the deck list, which you can take a look at on your own, but we're going to be looking at it through here on Magic Online. So this is very much an aggro deck, and one of the one of the philosophies that you have to keep in mind when you're playing an aggro deck is you're trying to outspend your opponent on mana, right? By playing something on turn 1 and then playing a 2-drop on turn 2 and then spending all 3 of your mana on turn 3. If you're able to do that, it's very likely that in the beginning of the game you're going to have a significant board advantage over your opponent. So aggro decks are trying to just make sure that they're spending their mana in the early parts of the game, and that's why you can see that this deck is just chock full of 1-drops and 2-drops. We have, I guess the backbone of the deck is kind of the equipment. So we have 4 Honed Khopesh, 1 mana to play, 1 mana to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. It's a decent stats boost. It's good at letting you use up mana that's lying around, right? As I said, mana efficiency is kind of the key for aggro decks, so this is one way that we just make sure we're spending all of our mana every turn. Just a very, very solid card. It triggers prowess on Spellweaver Eternal. Same thing with Inventor's Goggles. Inventor's Goggles is slightly better on turn 1, but then in the middle of the game it's probably a little bit worse than Honed Khopesh. So Inventor's Goggles, it's more expensive to equip than Honed Khopesh. You get an extra point of toughness, +1/+2 instead of +1/+1. But the real spice of Inventor's Goggles, which is actually tech that Luca used in his blue-green Auras deck. You should check out that video as well. He was playing Inventor's Goggles along with a bunch of Artificers, and we've got some of that synergy in this deck as well. So turn 1 Inventor's Goggles, if we follow it up with either Aether Swooper, which is an Artificer, or Aether Poisoner, which is also an Artificer, then Inventor's Goggles will just attach straight onto it. The Bastion Inventor, which we'll talk more about later, is also an Artificer, so we have Artificer synergy to go with the Inventor's Goggles. So it's a better turn 1 play than Honed Khopesh, because if we curve out, then we get significant mana advantage. Usually it costs 2 to get that effect, but if we're able to equip it for free, it's like we got 2 extra mana. And so that philosophy of just trying to outspend your opponent in the beginning of the game, Inventor's Goggles lets you get way ahead in terms of that. So that's kind of the backbone of the deck. We're playing a bunch of really small creatures, but we can kind of buff them up to be able to favorably attack into opponents' 3-drops or 4-drops, maybe even their 5 or 6-drops. So looking at the creatures here, we've got 4 Slitherblade. It's the only 1-drop in the deck. It is important to get onto the board early, and Slitherblade lets you do that. It's probably the second best turn 1 play after Inventor's Goggles. So Slitherblade lets you start attacking. He wears equipment really well, right? Once he becomes a 2, 3, maybe even a 4 power attacker, he's a real potent threat. So Slitherblade is a 4 of. We've got 4 Spellweaver Eternal. This is one of the cards that Kyle was using in his build of blue-black aggro. And it's, as I said in that video, this is, in terms of pushing damage through, this is the best 2-drop that you can play. Aether Swooper is very close. Aether Swooper might be a little bit better on turn 2 if you played Inventor's Goggles on turn 1, but Spellweaver Eternal is close on its heels even with an Inventor's Goggles. So Spellweaver Eternal, just he gets really big. We play a lot of non-creature spells, and they almost all of them cost 1. So he can be attacking for 3 or 4 damage on turn 2, maybe even 5 damage if you're equipping a Kopesh or something. So very, very strong card. It kind of lets you snowball the game. Getting prowess triggers is like creating extra mana. So you get that tempo in the short term, and that's what this deck is trying to do. Same thing with Aether Swooper and Aether Poisoner. They're decent bodies on their own, better bodies with Inventor's Goggles, but they also can create servo artifact creatures, which, it might be turn into card advantage later. It might turn into chump blocking later to help you win a race. The servo might even start attacking them. And the servo can definitely be used to pay for Bastion Inventor. So the top of the curve, the only spell in the deck that costs more than 2 mana is Bastion Inventor, but it could very easily cost 2 mana. All of the equipments can tap to make Bastion Inventor cheaper, and the cool thing about equipment is you don't have to tap them to equip them, so you can use them on a creature. They can be doing work in play, buffing up a creature, and you can still tap them to improvise out Bastion Inventor. So the equipment synergize really well with Bastion Inventor, as well as the servo tokens from Aether Swooper and Aether Poisoner. As we mentioned earlier, Bastion Inventor is also an Artificer, and he has Hexproof. So if your opponent has like a big removal spell waiting for your big giant creature, then Bastion Inventor is going to rain on their parade. Rounding out the deck, we've got a pair of Die Young. This card it makes 2 energy, and then you can spend an energy to give a creature -1/-1, or spend any amount of energy and they get -1/-1 until end of turn for each energy you spend. So it's for sure going to take out a 2 toughness creature all the time. If you have energy lying around from Aether Poisoner or Aether Swooper, then it might take out a 3 toughness, a 4 toughness creature. So Die Young is just a decent removal spell. We're playing 2 Unsummon. This is very good at getting 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops out of the way if we just want to push through for just a little bit more damage, right? If we go turn 1 creature, turn 2 creature, turn 3, play a creature, unsummon their creature, then we're probably going to be very much ahead on tempo. Same thing with Skullduggery. Skullduggery gives 1 creature you control +1/+1, and a creature they control -1/-1. So this card lets you win in combat very often, essentially giving your creature a +2 advantage in combat that they are not expecting. Or if your opponent is playing 1 toughness creatures, then you can just pump up your creature to get in more damage and then kill their blocker. So Skullduggery is very versatile, very good. It packs a lot of punch for only 1 mana. And then the last 4 cards in the deck are for Opt. Opt is just a very solid card, helps smooth out the deck. If we need to dig, we're only playing 20 lands, so Opt kind of lets us cheat on lands a little bit, because if we need lands, we can go digging for it. But if we have enough lands, then we want to cast Opt and look for action cards. So Opt smooths out the deck, and it's a nice trigger for Spellweaver Eternal Prowess. So that's the deck. Quick comment on the mana base. We're playing only basics in the mana base to try to just keep it as smooth as possible. Since we're only playing 20 lands, we don't really have space for utility lands like Cradle of the Accursed or the Deserts. We want our lands to come into play untapped so that we can outspend our opponent in the early turns of the game. We don't want to have to get to the late game where Deserts and Cradle of the Accurseds are good. We have a sideboard here. When I play against the students in the end boss fight of the youth tournaments, I usually don't sideboard, but I usually have one ready. So if they want to do hard mode and use their sideboard, then I'll use my sideboard as well. But here in the sideboard, we've just got these spells are all good against aggressive decks. Anything that you want more cheap removal against, these are all very good. Cartouche of Ambition is probably our best game plan against the red aggro deck, which probably beats us in most cases. If they're playing 4 Magma Sprays and 4 Shocks and 4 Lightning Strikes, then it's going to be hard for us to effectively block their creatures. So we're probably going to be on our back foot, and one of our best game plans is to just stick a Bastion Inventor and put a Cartouche on it, and hopefully win the red matchup that way. And then more removal spells for their cheap guys. We've got some cards in here that are good in kind of longer games. Resourceful Return lets you get back a creature. If you control an artifact, which we almost always will, then you also draw a card. So, if your opponent is planning on killing all your guys, then you can sideboard into a card like this to just get some card advantage, let you recoup your creatures that are dying. Wandering Death is similar. It costs 1 more. It lets you get back 2 creatures. You can cycle it if you don't have any creatures in your yard. Both of these cards are letting you get plus 1 card, right? You're spending 1 card to get 2 cards back. But sometimes I'm not sure which one is better. Resourceful Return seems slightly better to me, so it might be correct to have 3 Resourceful Return in the sideboard instead of the split, but we'll see. Desert of the Glorified, if we're gonna increase the curve by playing Resourceful Return and Wandering Death, then we probably want to get a 21st land into the deck. So that's just there for when we're siding into these expensive spells. Contract Killing and Essence Scatter are for any decks that are trying to like ramp into creatures. If they're trying to like play a 7-drop or an 8-drop or something spicy like that, then Essence Scatter and Contract Killing are about as good as it gets. Contract Killing, lets you continue curving out while also killing their creatures, so you can play your 2-drop, play Contract Killing and a 2-drop in the same turn. So yeah, this is the deck that I'll probably use for the end boss fight for the next youth tournament. So if any of you guys are tuning in on this and you're going to come to the next tournament, if you're planning on winning, then you're going to have to probably play against this deck or something close to it in the end boss fight. So remember, the winner of the boss fight gets to roll a d12, so a 12-sided die, and they get extra packs equal to however many they roll. So yeah, if you make it to the end of the tournament, this is the deck that's going to stand between you and that sweet treasure chest of extra packs. So thanks for checking out the deck. I hope that you found it interesting, and let me know what you think. If you have your own standard Pauper deck ideas and you want some feedback on them, leave me a comment and I'll check that out. And always looking for new topics to do videos on. So let me know what you're thinking, what you would like to see, and thanks for stopping by. Last but not least, if you enjoy the content that we make, please consider becoming a patron. If you give even just $1 a month, you'll get to join the community. I'm going to start doing monthly question and answer videos that anyone will be able to see, but if you're a patron, then you'll get your questions answered, and you'll get access to our monthly expenditure report. So and you'll get a sweet sticker too. So consider becoming a patron. Help support the content, help support Youth Magic on Oahu, and thanks for stopping by.